like small intimate cons, I would hope you would understand that maybe the largest convention in the entire country is not necessarily for you. What's up guys, and welcome back to my channel, or if it's your first time, welcome to the channel. And today we're going to discuss Anime Expo, the biggest anime convention in the country. So I'm gonna be totally honest, this was going to be a review. I was going to make a review of this convention right after I went 10 months ago. Yes, it was in July, and the date that I am recording this is March 31st. We are closer to 2024 than we are to the convention in 2023. But with that being said, I figured I would kind of reword the way I was going to do this video and talk about pros and cons and fixes that are coming or fixes that I think they need. And at the end of it, we'll decide, is Anime Expo for you? So first things first, I do want to say Anime Expo is the largest convention in North America. And what that means is this is a huge event. I mean, there is so much to do at this convention between panels, the vendor hall, the entertainment hall, the artist alley, the guests, the food. It is like a full immersion experience. This is not your average local con to you. You know, maybe you live in a different state like I do, or you live in a smaller area of California. Anime Expo is LA. It's in the heart of LA. It is huge. There are so many people, and because there's so many people, it can get a little bit crowded. Now, I want to make something very clear. I am fully aware, and this is kind of a disclaimer, when it comes to conventions, probably no one else is going to have the exact same experience as me, because not everyone is at a con for the same reason I am. And in fact, this con was a little bit different for me because I usually don't pay super close attention to panels with guests and that sort of thing. But that mostly comes from the fact that I don't watch anime dubbed. And most conventions, if there's a panel about an anime with the voice cast, it's with the English dub voice cast. I couldn't really care less. But at Anime Expo, it's a little bit different, so let's talk about that. Now, I'm gonna kind of quickly talk through about what I experienced at Anime Expo 2023, what I thought was good, what I thought was bad. Registration is probably gonna be open until at least a couple weeks before the convention starts, so if you're really on the fence, I hope that this video can really help you. But like I said, I had my own experience. I know my experience is different than the person next to me. However, I did see a ton of people posting about Anime Expo after it was all said and done with this one picture of this lobby just completely stuffed to the brim. And it is good to bring awareness to the fact that this does happen every year at this con, and it is an issue. It is unsafe. Like, this kind of crowding is unsafe. You chance a crowd crush. You chance someone getting seriously hurt when you have this many people in such a small area. But I want y'all to know that I went all 4 days of the con and I never experienced this. In fact, my experience was far from that. I remember thinking when we were leaving, and my friends that I was with agreed with me, there are cons here local to me in Arizona where I've felt more crowded than I ever felt at this con. I don't really necessarily think that they are overselling tickets. They probably could do with selling a little bit less. However, there's stuff going on behind the scenes that we as people who attend cons don't really know. I've never ran a con, so I try to be as open to things that are going on as possible before I start to complain, because it's run by humans and there's gonna be issues, and when you're dealing with a crowd of 20,000 people, there's gonna be problems. But throughout the con, I tried to take photos and videos of the crowds and kind of show people what it looked like for the majority of the con. Now, it's very important to note that this is not like a, oh, you just have to know where to be at what time in order to avoid this. It is more of a, you just need to know when this happens, which is a very short period of time, and avoid that very specific time, or just understand that it is probably going to happen and you need to just be prepared for that. My friends and I arrived on day one of the con at about 1 o'clock in the afternoon, so we were there a few hours after it had opened, and it took us longer to find the entrance because we had never been there before and knew nothing about the building at all than it did for us to actually walk in. So the people that are saying like the con is entirely like this, they're blowing a situation way out of proportion. And this is not to like try and tell people that they shouldn't be changing this and that this shouldn't be happening. This shouldn't be happening. However, this is not Anime Expo. I never experienced this once, and I did go all 4 days. So I just see so many videos on the internet about how Anime Expo is so unsafe, it's so unorganized, it's so bad, it's not worth it. And I'm just like, you know what? Anime Expo is the largest convention in North America. If you are not a crowds person or you like small intimate cons, I would hope you would understand that maybe the largest convention in the entire country is not necessarily for you. But if you're still trying to determine that, let's talk about it. So my friends and I, like I said, attended all 4 days. Now, something to note that was different about last year that it is from this year is that last year the days were a little bit all over the place because they always try to have one of the days fall on 4th of July. Now last year 4th of July was a Tuesday, which meant that the convention actually started on a Saturday, which is always the most busy day of any convention, and it went until Tuesday. So because this year is back to their regular schedule of starting on Thursday and going until Sunday, it could be a slightly different experience. I'm not sitting here saying that I'm a veteran attendee of Anime Expo because I have only attended once. However, I do think that it's important to share my perspective of it when literally everything you see on the internet focuses on this one idea that the lobby always looks like this when that's not true. So like I said, we attended all 4 days, but we got there a few hours late on Saturday and then we were there the full day on Sunday. We did hide in a panel room for pretty much the entirety of Sunday. We were in there from about 9:30 in the morning until about 5 p.m. If you do that with friends, it's quite a lot of fun. We definitely missed out on some things because of our schedule of being in the panel room all day, but I know that not everyone's gonna do what we did because we're like hardcore fans of Demon Slayer and we wanted to be on the front row, so we just hung out in the panel room all day long. And not everyone is gonna wanna do that. I totally get that, but we still got a full experience of the con with like missing the first few hours of the first day and spending so much time in the panel rooms. And there was only one period of time where I felt congested enough with people, like I felt like it was crowded enough that I needed to like sit down. It was in Artist Alley on the final day. And I think it's because of the way Artist Alley is set up. The aisles are very, very narrow, so it makes it very hard to stand at a booth and purchase something without people like trying to get by because it's literally like the aisle is like this wide. It's not a wide aisle, and I think that's something that not necessarily capping tickets is going to help. Like everyone says, everyone just goes to the, oh, they gotta cap tickets sooner, oh, they gotta cap tickets sooner, maybe a little bit sooner, but I don't think it's as intense as people make it out to be. I very much remember right before this convention attending another convention here in Phoenix where I looked at a crowd at one point at that con and was like, I'm not trying to get through that. It was so bad, and I never experienced that at Anime Expo. Okay, so why is Anime Expo such a big convention, you might be asking? Well, Anime Expo offers a lot of things that a lot of local conventions don't have. Let's make this our pros list of Anime Expo and why exactly it brings in so many people from all over the country that want to attend this event every year. So number one, and I'm gonna put this at number one because it's important to me, it's like I want to go to this con, and that is that they bring actual Japanese guests. Something that I find a little bit frustrating but understandable about local cons is that whenever there's guests from certain animes, it's always the English dub voice actors that I don't watch anime dubbed. I couldn't care less about that. I've met a few because I have friends that do enjoy meeting those dub voice actors, and I've like gone in line with them and just gotten to talk to them, and they're really, really cool people. I've met Ray Chase. He gave us a free picture because we were in Tengen, Hinatsudo, and Rengoku cosplays, and he just like talked to us for a while because he had no line. I've met Jonah Scott, who's Kokushibo. He was also really nice. I met briefly Johnny Vong Bosch. I can't remember his name exactly. He's Gyu but he was really nice. I've met them, but I'm not gonna spend hours in their line. I'm not gonna spend money to get things signed because I don't watch anime dub. That's just a me prerogative. So when a con has Japanese voice actors coming, I light up. I get so excited because it's not every day that you get an opportunity to see these people that voice in these animes all the way from Japan come here. Now, there is something to note about these Japanese voice actors is that very few of them take part in signings or meet and greets. Most of them just come as guests of their animes or the studios that are bringing like a bunch of animes, like Aniplex is a big one that brings a whole lineup of animes, and they of course have Demon Slayer, they have Twisted Wonderland, they have My Love Story with Yamada-kun at level 999, so like they bring in these voice actors. These voice actors aren't necessarily guests of Anime Expo, they're guests of Aniplex, and Aniplex is putting on events at Anime Expo. And I think it's partially just because the idol industry in Japan is so completely different than it is here in America. Japanese people are much more private with themselves, and they're less likely to want to just like interact a ton with fans. They're a little bit more shy. There's also the language barrier situation where they have to have translators with them the whole time, and that can be a little bit tough. So that's maybe a downside to the Japanese voice actors being there, is that most of them you're not actually going to get to meet. So if you're hoping to, you know, wait in line for 3 hours and meet Tanjiro's voice actor when you see that he's listed, it's highly unlikely that you'll get to do that. But you will get to still see him live on the stage. He'll do live readings from whatever anime he's there for, and it's a really fun time. Another thing that really brings a lot of people in, like I said earlier, is just how much there is to do. And I mean, there is so much. It is a never-ending list of things to do at this convention, to the point where it can almost get overwhelming because it's hard to decide what you want to do. You have to really prioritize yourself at this convention. Otherwise, you're just gonna miss out on something that you might have wanted to do. That's why it's 4 days. It's awesome that it's 4 days because there's so much to do, but they have a vendor hall. They have an artist alley, which is the size of vendor halls of local cons or bigger. They have an entertainment hall, which also has a lot of shopping, but also has a lot of like entertainment booths. That's where content creators will buy a booth and interact with their fans and that sort of thing. There is this huge food district that is really, really fun. They bring in a lot of authentic Japanese cuisine and local businesses to make food for us. And there is panels, there is of course the big ones about the big animes that are put on by the companies, so it's got the Japanese voice actors, but there's also like smaller panels where you can go do a workshop with a local cosplayer where they talk about tips and tricks, that sort of thing. It is a jam-packed schedule. You are never going to be bored at this convention because outside of everything that's on this schedule, when you're just walking around, if you enjoy cosplay, there are so many amazing cosplayers there. This is an event that many of those super well-known cosplayers will come to and just walk around because it's such a big convention. People flying from all over the world to attend this event just as cosplayers. There's professional photographers literally everywhere. Even my friends and I who are not professional cosplayers, we do it for fun. We still got stopped by a lot of people, got pictures taken of us, and it was a really fun time. You get to meet a lot of people as well because there's so many people there. You're going to find someone who cosplays from the same show as you or something like that, and you can connect on that level. There was even, like, there's meetups. I heard the Demon Slayer meetup was freaking huge. I just didn't attend because it was literally scheduled like an hour before the Demon Slayer panel, and I was like, Japanese voice actor or cosplay meetup that I do at all the cons. I mean, it was way bigger than the ones that I normally do, but Japanese voice actors. High priority on my list, like I said. But they have setups outside. There were literally just like photographers set up and lines of people that were just wanting to take pictures with them in this like greenery area. And there's also just a ton of stuff to do right outside the convention. There's restaurants, there's bars, there's just all kinds of places. It's close to Orpheum Theater. You know, there's so many things that you can fill your time with that it just makes it for an overall really fun experience. Now, like I said, because there's so much to do, you have to be very careful with your time. You have to schedule yourself out. You need to make sure you prioritize the things that you want to do and understand that if you're a big fan of something that's really, really popular, let's say you really want to go to the Demon Slayer panel, your best bet is to get into that panel room a few panels beforehand, because that room, I heard it's at 4,000 people, and it was stuffed to the brim for the Demon Slayer panel. I mean, there was people that couldn't even get into that panel because of how popular it was. So also keep that in mind. If you're a big fan of things that are super popular, you're gonna want to spend a lot of time in the panel room ahead of time. If you want to be like super front to the stage or like close to front row or front row in general, you have to not only be in that panel room all day, but you also need to start lining up at the con a lot sooner. Again, this is all part of the entire experience. It is a large con. You are going to be waiting in lines. You're going to be waiting around if you want to do things. It's part of just having a very, very popular convention is lines. But those are the main things that people come for. There's just so much to do, and when you go into the vendor hall, you also have a lot of official booths rather than just like the secondhand wholesale people. You know, you can buy things straight from Aniplex that usually you can't get in the States. You can buy things from the Jujutsu Kaisen booth. You can do a little immersive experience inside Gojo's domain expansion if you want. There was a line for that I never really felt like needing to do. There was a Crunchyroll booth. There's lots of content creators that have millions of followers. It's a great opportunity to get to meet them. And that is why you have to decide, are you into that kind of stuff? Are you into the cons where it's like you have something to do left and right and you want to see these Japanese voice actors, you want to be able to shop at the official Aniplex booth, you want to feel like you have something to do every second of every day, then yes, go to this con. Now let's talk about some of the cons of this con. Now, I'm just gonna get it out of the way. Yes, even though I never felt overwhelmed with crowding, it is still very crowded. There are lots of people attending this con. It is something you just have to accept before you get there. Before you buy your badge, understand that there are going to be lots of people there. If you get overwhelmed in crowds very easily, if you do not like to be brushing up against people, if you cannot stand the fact that some cosplayers do not wear deodorant, which I can't, but I can deal with it, then that can be a con, for sure. I don't mind crowd. I'm not even bothered by it, and I, like I said, didn't experience the big crowd like you see on the internet everywhere, but there are still lots and lots and lots and lots, lots of people there. So you have to understand that no matter what, even if they were to cap sales sooner, there's still going to be over 10,000 people at this event, and you need to accept that before you go. If you cannot do it, then this con is not for you. Now, I do want to talk a little bit more in depth about the whole super crowded lobby that you see plastered everywhere on the internet when it happened. Like I said, I never experienced it. The lobby, I got lots of pictures. This is what the lobby looked like when I arrived a few hours after it opened on Saturday. Again, lots of people, but there's plenty of space to breathe. You can walk around. You're still quite a few feet away from people unless you're trying to pose with someone. And it was overall like a very normal con lobby, in my opinion. I was not feeling super condensed. I wasn't feeling like I was just like brushing shoulders with everyone. I felt pretty fine, like honestly. A couple things that I saw on the internet when the con started was people waited 5 hours to get in. I can only assume these people either one got there 3 hours before it opened and then had to wait another 2 hours to get in because it was full and they were waiting to get people in, or they also had to wait and pick up their badge. I will say when we arrived, the registration line still looked incredibly long, but there is a very easy way to avoid this line, and it is something that I highly suggest to anyone who's thinking of attending, and that is get your badge mailed to you. Now, yes, this does cost extra money. It was $10 to get it shipped to you. But if you are spending, even if you're doing one day and it's a $70 badge, spend the extra $10 to get it mailed to you. You're going to save yourself so much time and so much stress to bypass the registration line and just walk into the con, that you're not going to have to wait 5 hours to get in. The people that said they had to wait probably had to also wait in that line, and it's a very easily fixable thing. If you are going to this con, you're going to spend a lot of money, you need to just throw that $10 at the option to mail it to you. And keep in mind that if you think that's gonna be a little bit too much, you're gonna be spending $10 left and right once you get in. even food sometimes is $20 depending on the food trucks you pick and that sort of thing. So keep that in mind. It is a very expensive con, and that is the second con, is that this con is something, especially if you have to visit, like if you're traveling for this con, it is very hard to spend under $1,000 to get like a good hotel. Parking is incredibly expensive. You're better off getting an Uber from your hotel there. It'll probably still be cheaper. And I think I just bought my full event badge and it was about $200 with taxes, and I got it shipped, all that fun stuff. So it is a very expensive con. The food trucks, the food district, all of this is severely overpriced. It's again easily avoidable once you're in. If you need to have a budget, just don't spend too much money on merch, which is really hard to do, I understand, but that is a self-control thing that you kind of sometimes have to go into cons with. And if you're like, I'm so hungry, get food at the taco stand inside the convention center. I think this year my friends and I are only going to do the food district that's outside once, because we spent hella money on just food. I spent like $20 on one of the food trucks, and it was just this cup of noodles, and it was like good ramen, but it had like 2 pieces of meat, and I was still hungry when I finished, and I was like, I could have just driven to Chick-fil-A. And so you just gotta be careful. I would say don't just eat food at the con, but this is also something that is true for any con. Every con that I have ever attended has, you're gonna be spending a lot of money on food. Once you're in the con, it is not free once you're in there. You still, if you want to buy merch, you have to pay for it. If you want to get food, you have to pay for it. Some photographers will approach you in your cosplay, but you have to pay for the photographs. Most of them don't do that. Most of them, if they approach you, they'll do it for free, but you just never know. So you have to be prepared, and you need to put away a lot of money for food and that sort of thing. So it is a very pricey convention. Most of the hotels nearby are super, super expensive because it's downtown LA. You're better off probably staying a little bit farther away and spending a lot less on your hotel, and then getting an Uber, splitting it with friends. Definitely go with friends. I don't think it would be that good of a con to go to alone. You would get probably fairly overwhelmed. I would get overwhelmed if I went to it alone, and I really don't even care that much about crowds. So it is a fairly big con that would be hard to do alone. But you can split your expenses when you do it with a group of people. So if you're Ubering there, or you need a park, the parking is $75 on Saturday. Well, if you split it 4 ways, it's not as bad as it seems. But it is very pricey, so just keep that in mind. That is a little bit of a con, is that it's by far the most expensive con that I've ever attended. Okay, another con is there is definitely times of pretty extreme disorganization, which is kind of surprising for a convention that's been around as long as Anime Expo has. But at the same time, it's hard because it's ran by humans, and with humans there's going to be mistakes, there's going to be a little bit of disorganization, and that's going to happen. However, there were some things that I was like, there's really no excuse for this. Like, the map on the app was completely useless for someone who had never been inside that convention center before. I thought that I was just dumb and couldn't read it for whatever reason, and I'm usually good at reading maps, so I was very confused as to why I was struggling with it. And then we randomly saw this Aaron cosplayer, and he was like, do you guys know where this is? And we were like, this is our first time. We have no idea what we're doing. We're trying to find this room. We have no idea how to get there. And we're looking at the map, and we're all just super freaking confused because it didn't make any sense at all. So for newcomers that don't understand the building that we're in, the map does not work. It was completely useless. We ended up just having to walk around until we found signs pointing us in the direction. And that being said, there wasn't a ton of signage either. The way they lined up for the main events hall was very confusing. There was no sign that said this is the queue for the main events hall or for this panel or anything like that. You just kind of remembered where the room was, you went outside, and then you hoped that the queue that you got into was the correct one, considering that there was one right by it too. So they need more signage, which is something that they can easily do. I'm sure they have the budget to print some more signs and say, this is the queue for main events hall, and then have a schedule of the panels for that day. Not that hard to do, and I think that it's something that very much could have made our first experience easier. But the thing is too, maybe they don't find that very important, because once you've done the con once, you'll know the next time you go that it's like that. So just keep that in mind. The signage and the map is not super helpful. You're better off just probably trying to find someone who looks like they know what they're doing and ask them where a room is, because some of these people that are attending this con have been attending it since it started, so they know what they're doing. They've been in this convention center multiple times, and they can direct you to where you need to go. Don't rely on the map. Don't rely on staff either, because a lot of them, this is their first time, or they're just volunteers and they don't really know that much. So be patient with people. And also, there's gonna be lines. And that's the final big con, is there's so many people that you're just gonna be waiting in line a lot. You're gonna be sitting around, you're gonna be waiting. If there's anything that you wanna do that's popular, or like I said earlier, you're gonna just wait in line, and that's just something that is going to happen. It's the same as Disneyland, it's the same as anything that's full of people, is that there's gonna be standing around and waiting. If you know what you're getting into, you'll understand, and you'll just prepare for the fact that you're gonna be waiting in line for certain things. Not everything has a line, it's the more popular things. So we're talking like the super popular animes, Jujutsu Kaisen, Demon Slayer, Attack on Titan, anything that just has a huge fan base, you're gonna wait in line to get into. Now, talking about the big crowds, while I wasn't there to experience this, I think it's important to note that I never experienced it, because I avoided the first few hours of the con, and I think that's the only time that this happened. And I find this with any con that I've attended, the first few hours of the first day is always the most disorganized, always the most that's in most disarray. Things are gonna happen because these staff members and these volunteers and security and everyone involved, they've trained, they've probably rehearsed certain things, but you don't know what's gonna happen until it actually happens. And this is true for literally anything in life. And so that causes there to be an issue. Now, there's also one thing to keep in mind about last year and the years prior to that. The big crowd that you see is like the main lobby of the convention, and the main lobby of the convention, the vendor hall and the artist alley is directly off of that. The entrances to those two places you can only get to from that main lobby with all the windows that you see on the internet. And the thing that is happening is the panels themselves start at 10. But the vendor hall, artist alley, entertainment hall, anywhere where you want to shop did not open until 11. So what would happen is the doors to the convention center, at least on the days that I was there right when it opened, were opening at like 9:30, so that people could get to panels on time for 10 o'clock. But because the vendor hall didn't open until 11, a lot of people were getting into the building, but then they were just trying to get to the vendor hall, which wasn't open yet. So they would literally just get in front of the vendor hall and stand there and wait. And that is that big crowd that you see. They got into the convention hall, but they are waiting that hour and a half or 2 hours before the vendor hall even opens, because they want to be the first ones in there. Now, this causes an issue for those of you who are wanting to get to the panels earlier, and it can make for congestion because the hallways start to fill up with the people that are just trying to get into the vendor hall or artist alley. And then you start getting into that like phase that you saw on the internet where people were like, I'm trying to get somewhere, I can't get anywhere. And it's because the doors to the convention center opened way before anything else opened, except for the panels. So a few people tried to get to panels, there was a struggle, everyone else was just waiting around for everything else to open. So that caused just like the stagnant standing around line. A lot of people say that this can be fixed with a ticket cap. Now, I think that, like I said, we can cap tickets sooner, but I don't think that's that important. There's so many people at this event, but it is so spread out at the convention center, and then there's also the hotel has a bunch of stuff happening in there. They have a panel room in there that seats like 2,000 people that's full all the time because they also put a lot of big panels into there. And so there's just people everywhere. I never, like I said, like it felt like a normal con to me. I never felt super overly crowded because it just was a very big area with lots of people. Can they cap tickets sooner? I'm sure they could if they wanted to. However, it's important to note that when you get into the area of capping tickets, then you find yourself kind of in the situation of Anime NYC, where Anime NYC caps their tickets super early on to the point of it selling out the day it goes live, meaning so many people don't even get the opportunity to go at all because it just sells out so fast because they cap it so quickly. And now you have people that just can't attend at all when they were like planning on it because just when the tickets went available was in the middle of their pay cycle, or they had a bill come up that they didn't know, or they had some financial trouble that they didn't know was going to happen, and now they just can't attend the con at all. there's so many other ways to alleviate the issue of the crowding than to just cap tickets. Cap tickets, cap tickets. That's all you see on the internet when it's like, let's get a little bit more creative. And Anime Expo has done that this year. So they have announced a few changes that I think are really exciting and that are going to help this year. And I'm really interested to see just how well it goes. So the first thing that they did is they announced that all exhibit halls will now open at 9 a.m. Now, it didn't specifically say that they were changing the hours to the con, because last year I believe the hours were like 9 is when they opened the doors to the con technically. But if the vendor hall opens when the doors of the con open, this is going to completely alleviate this issue, because everyone who's trying to get into the con will now immediately have a place to go. The people who want to go see a panel at 10 can still get to the panel. They start letting people in super early. You can get into the panel room, you can sit down, you can chill. The people who want to get to the vendor hall can just walk into the con, go straight into the vendor hall and start shopping. There's not going to be this issue of crowding. And the comments on this are all still people saying like, oh, you need to move where the convention is. Oh, you need to still cap ticket sales, blah, 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 blah. That's such a just, oh, I'm being angry for angry's sake. You need to like actually think of good ideas to make this better, because this only happened for a short period of time. It's clear that it happened because people were just standing around waiting. It doesn't take a rocket science to figure out that maybe people were standing around because the doors to the convention center opened way earlier than everything else opened. So people were just like, I'm just sitting here waiting. People fill it up, and then you have the crowd issue. The other thing they're changing is they are going to have more entrances. So last year, and I think most of the years prior to that, there were only 2 entrances into the con, and they were the 2 main entrances into the convention center. There were more exits on the like back side of the convention center, but those were only exits. You couldn't come back in that way. And I think what they're gonna do probably is just make those also entrances, which is gonna be great because one of those exits was right by the queue for the main events panel room, which is where they host the Demon Slayer stuff the whole time. So if you are getting there super early because you wanna be front row of a panel, now you know you can just line up at this entrance and literally just walk into the queue rather than trying to like get through a bunch of other crowds trying to find it. So I honestly think that these 2 fixes in themselves are going to severely help with the crowding issue that was happening at the beginning of day 1. And this crowding did not happen any other day. We got there at the time in which it opened and there was no crowding issues. Yes, there were lines. Yes, we got there super early and the lines are already pretty long. If you're gonna get there super early and you are ready to wait in line, then do it. But if you don't have a reason to get there super early, I would say just get there maybe 30 minutes after it opens. Everything will be through and you'll probably just walk in. Those are the changes that they're making, and it seems like they're really listening to us, but they're actually listening in a way that like makes sense, and they're making changes that need to happen to make sure that this crowding that can be very unsafe because it was so packed in those videos, they understand that that needs to change, but that maybe the answer is not just capping ticket sales. But I think that's pretty much it that I wanted to talk about Anime Expo. It was a really, really fun experience. We had so much fun getting to see the voice actors. My favorite voice actor, Natsuki Hanai, who voices Tanjiro. He also voices Kaneki and Vanitas and Falco and so many characters. He has attended 2 years in a row now. Last year he said that he wants to come back and that he's learning English so he can try to be fluent and talk to us. Maybe he'll come as a guest one of these times. And it's just a really fun time. There's just so many things to do. My friends and I had the time of our lives. We were literally driving home talking about our plans for the next year, and it's kind of crazy to think that we're pretty much April now and it's already pretty much time to go. I feel like 4th of July is quite literally around the corner. But I think if you can handle crowds and you understand what you're signing up for, that there's going to be a lot of people there, you are going to be waiting in lines, but you have the opportunity to see and do so much while you're there, definitely go. If you're someone who likes those small settings, not really a big fan of crowds, not a big fan of standing in line, and you don't really have an interest in seeing Japanese voice actors or getting official merch, then I would say stick with your local cons. There's nothing wrong with doing that. But just know what you're getting into and try to have fun. Try to be positive about your experience rather than letting the first couple of hours of day 1 determine your entire event. So that's going to be it. I am going to be posting updates as they make announcements on panels and guests and all the fun stuff as the next few months progress. last year they did start posting some pretty big name voice actors that were coming in May, and then the panel schedule went live at the end of May, and then they announced all the big panels at the beginning of June, so I'm assuming it's going to be around the same this year as well. Stay tuned for all of those updates, and don't forget to hit that subscribe button if you do want to know. Hit that bell notification so you get notified every time I make a new video. And I'm also on all social media. You can follow me on Instagram, TikTok, Twitter. I guess it's called X now, at Looking Nerdy. That's it. Have a great day, everyone. Johnny!